here's something that should hurt your brain. We could empty half of all the beds in all the hospitals in the world by just giving people clean water.
So have you ever heard of Dean Kamen?
No.
No?
No. I don't think so. I have not heard of Dean Kamen. I've heard of the Cayman Islands, but not Dean Kamen.
Okay. Do you know what a Segway is?
Of course. Yes, I know what those are.
Can you
Little
just-
trolleys.
The little things you ride with two wheels? Yeah.
So Dean Kamen's the guy that invented the Segway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, is that the dude that, like, drove the Segway off the cliff?
He's dead, isn't he?
Didn't he fall off one and die?
A lot of people think the inventor of the Segway is dead, but they don't really know who invented the Segway.
This rumor has been out that the Segway guy has died. Got it. One of the people that hears this story is my mother. So she, of course, calls my cell phone and gets no answer. There are so many messages. I call my mother and say, Mother, what's wrong? Now that I'm talking to you, nothing. Oh, did that really work? Yeah. So what is that thing actually for? All you're really trying to do is see something and hear something that you knew to be contemporaneous. I was just trying to make some noise to confuse them.
No, but
Oh, but that should have information about where in the system it
also
is.
has the take and it has the numbers.
Okay, come back, come back. I must admit, I do like technology. I like machines, and I like the efficiency they deliver. I'm guilty. From a very early age, I both wanted to know more and more about the rules by which this universe of ours operates. And through the world of engineering, I wanted to start applying those rules to create inventions that would give people a better quality of life if those inventions work. Most kids, when they grow up, develop what's called good judgment. That's what we as adults call it, when we actually lose our sense of fun, our imagination, and a whole lot of things that I didn't want to give up. When I was a kid, I thought, I'm gonna have a house where I can get up in the morning and go downstairs and open up a giant glass wall and take a helicopter out of my house and take off right from my house and go any place I want to go. When I was a kid, I thought it would be cool to have secret passages. I'm going to put secret passages in. Some people want a classic piece of artwork in their foyer, a Monet, a Rembrandt. In my foyer, I have this old steam engine built well over 150 years ago. It actually ran a tugboat called the HMS Oscar. I would be terrified to have to get on a horse, some great big animal with teeth. I don't want to go near a pile of muscle that big. But I've never been afraid of any machine. That engine, it's a work of art created by a different kind of artist. It also represents great achievements that took hundreds of years to develop and understand. When I'm awake, I'm working. So I'm wearing my work clothes.
Dean just doesn't know the difference between work and play, so he always wears his jeans. None of the kids like him. I have all the letters, and this one I got from Dean, 1964. Dear Mommy and Daddy, I want to come home, exclamation. If I can't come home, please send the following as soon as possible. 1 accountant, 1 marketing expert, 3 secretaries. I'll try to write again soon, but I have to go to volleyball now. Your woeful and outcast son, me. That was written. Then he wanted 3 secretaries.
I remember very well being a little kid. I'd think, and I'd look at the world, and I'd imagine things. Everything I saw gave me questions about everything. Why, when you bounce a ball, each time it hits the ground, it bounces lower on the next shot? How does it do that? You put a hot cup on the table, it cools off. You put a cold cup on the table, it warms up. How? Why? Most of what the world does is quite amazing, and you could be very confident it'll always do the same thing over and over again. But how does all that happen? There are a few people that actually took little pieces of that and made sense out of it. I asked my father for these great scientists and thinkers. They're beautiful art, and they're done by my father. You start with Archimedes. Over 2,000 years later, we still refer to Archimedes' principle. Staggeringly, after Archimedes, we had a few things which included the Dark Ages. We come out of them with a guy like Leonardo da Vinci. He was an artisan, an engineer, a scientist. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. And then you only have to wait a few hundred years to Galileo Galilei, really the first modern scientist. He gave us the scientific method. He dies in 1642, and we don't have to wait very long because in the same year, Isaac Newton is born. And Isaac Newton developed Newtonian mechanics, how masses move and interact with each other. Then 1860s comes James Clerk Maxwell and gives us what are now known as Maxwell's equations. 4 statements that link all of electricity, magnetism, light into a comprehensive, well-understood system. And by 1905, along comes Big Al. He sort of put us where we are today, and I'm waiting for the next big thing to happen. Between this guy from 200 BC through this guy who was alive when I was born, you've got 2,200 years. And other than these 6 guys, not much happened. It's pretty humbling, but it's pretty exciting to wonder about what will be the contribution of the next guy that deserves a place on this wall, or woman.
My middle brother has most of the fame in the family, and he's known for Segway. But the reality is he helped me solve a problem. We both used to say, you don't wake up in the morning and say, I got to invent something. You wake up in the morning and you say, there's a problem to be solved.
I had just put a machine shop in my parents' basement, and I started building electronics and selling it. And then my brother'd come home from med school. He was already working on his basic research, treating babies with leukemia. That was his specialty. But to deliver his new drugs and new therapies, you couldn't use all the standard medical equipment because even at their lowest rates, they were 10 times too high a rate for a baby. I said, Bart, why don't you leave the drug in the syringe that it came in the first place? And then we'll build you a little device with a precision motor that delivers it directly out of the syringe into the baby. So he said, that would be great. But by giving him those little drug delivery systems that were seen by all the rest of the faculty when he was still a student and off in med school, all these other physicians and researchers saw these little things and said, wait a minute, Since it's small and it's battery operated, I can slip it in the pocket of some adult and they can leave the hospital getting their drugs with a portable system, which didn't exist in those days. And then I'd start to ask these docs, like, what do you plan to deliver? How about insulin? We moved out of the basement. We started making lots of different pharmaceutical delivery systems, ended up building a nice company around that. I like to work on interesting problems, technical problems, that if they are solved, also can be used by a whole lot of people to make their lives better, which is why we've spent pretty much our whole career at DECA building medical equipment.
So the wiring actually goes right through the middle of it?
Right, so there's no rotation of those components. I'm an inventor. What do inventors do? Inventors look at problems, the same problems everybody else looks at, but see them differently. We were working on a way to make home dialysis a possibility. Probably 20 years ago, we said we could take dialysis and let people do it at home, alone, life support in their own bedroom. And most of the people at Baxter said, you're nuts. In fact, throughout my life, I only start on projects typically if enough credible people tell me, you're nuts. Because then you know this must be a big problem. Baxter had introduced the idea of peritoneal dialysis. The bad news is, while the therapy worked, the machine that could, quote, safely push this fluid through a patient turned out to be this. They loaded a bag up here, and you ran the tube out of the bag, not up to there, because the fluid can't travel by itself. They couldn't pump it because if something went wrong, then you pulled the tube out, and then you opened up this little device down to the floor, made a weight scale out of this, and they weigh the fluid as it's coming out. If the patient rolled over and tugged on the tube, took the bags that were hanging here, the patient had to run all of that stuff every day, or the nurse. So we looked at this and said, Baxter, it's a great therapy. You guys did something unbelievable. But the implementation of the solution is just too kludgy to fix. We got a better idea. We said, the problem isn't your machine is noisy, or your machine is heavy, or your machine is... The problem is this patient doesn't have a functioning kidney. We decided we could build a simple machine that would allow patients to dialyze themselves at home without having to live in a hospital or a dialysis center every other day for the rest of their lives. It was a completely different approach to a problem. That machine needed about 5 gallons of pure medical-grade water to operate. If we could find a way to make the purest water in the world out of the tap water in their home and turn it into medical-grade water, we could eliminate the next problem they were having, shipping all this water all over the country. We started working on a machine to turn tap water into water for injection. It turned out that unless you know everything about the water, in the Northeast it has iron, in other places it has other problems, we decided that a simple filter or a membrane or osmosis or activated charcoal is unlikely to meet the need. We decided we better go back to the gold standard that the medical community has used to make medical-grade water for 100 years. And that is, distill it. The problem is the energy required to distill water requires that you take water in its liquid phase at room temperature and not only get it hot enough to boil, to get frothy, we need to get it all to turn into steam. Nature does it because you got the sun, the biggest nuclear plant we've ever seen sitting out there that could boil all this water out of the ocean. That's an enormous amount of energy. We don't have a lot of energy. The magic of a vapor compression distiller, particularly the little one that we've made, is that the water comes in, it gets boiled, it gets condensed, and it comes out of the machine just a tad warmer than it went in because we took all the energy back out of it. And by recycling all of that energy, we reduce the requirements for this machine from 25,000 watts, which is about 20 houses worth of power, to less power than a handheld hairdryer. So now you take our machine and you plug it into any normal outlet in a typical home, and it uses a little bit of power. But it just keeps recycling that energy over and over and over again so that it's no big deal. I am a very slow learner. I'm very flattered that you think I'm a real genius. But if I'm a genius, all I can tell you is I am the slowest, dumbest genius you'll ever meet. You just gotta read it, and read it again, and read it again. Think about it, and think about it again. And then all of a sudden, it all starts to make sense.
Well, in third grade, when Mrs. Pfeffer said, Evelyn, I can't understand it. You're so bright, but he's not producing as he should.
I was having, as a little kid, a lot of trouble learning to read. If I would see letters out of context, or words that could be pots and stop and saw and was, I couldn't tell them apart. My older brother could read enormously fast. And I always figured it was practice or it was something I was doing wrong.
We're very concerned. I don't know that we broadcast it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but we weren't ashamed. We took him for testing, the local psychologist. He was a non-reader.
I wish I could find a way to not be dyslexic. But if somebody said, but here's the cost, if it took away something else that I'm good at this point in my life, I'd probably say, no, I'll stay with what I got. Compared to other problems, this one's not so bad. And maybe it was a catalyst to help me do other things particularly well. Once we realized we could take everything out of water, no matter what it is, organics, toxins, metals, we had a process to turn anything into pure water. Why use it only for this special subset of people that have a dialysis machine in their own bedroom? The scalability of this solution is what's attractive about it. The fact that it could be used all over the world, in all environments, with all kinds of bad water. That was sort of an epiphany. We recognized that a huge potential opportunity existed for solving the world's water problems with a vapor compression distiller. That same machine could be carried into villages and allow a few 100 million people or a few billion people to have the purest water in the world. I hadn't realized how big the problem was.
Analysis suggests the world will face a 40% shortfall of clean water by 2030.
We live on a planet 70% covered by water, and we're fighting over 0.5%.
Unless things change, water conflicts will escalate. Competition for water between Israel, Jordan, and Syria has turned the once mighty Jordan River into a trickle.
There's no way it's not going to affect everybody.
In Central America, the lack of drinking water, together with pollution, are having a huge impact on people's health.
Child mortality figures are horrific in Afghanistan. 1 child out of 5 dies under the age of 5 through drinking polluted water.
Almost 50 children are reporting in every day with symptoms of diarrhea and vomiting. Here, 4 children are forced to share one bed.
A million people might die in Bangladesh alone this year from contaminated water.
In the underdeveloped world, the average amount of time per day spent by women looking for water that's safe for their kids is 4 hours. And if it didn't turn out to be the right stuff, they spend the next day or 2 burying the babies. That shouldn't be their choices. They shouldn't have to go that far. They shouldn't have to make the choice between drinking the kind of stuff you wouldn't give to your dog or not having anything at all. Everybody else that's working on the global water problem is thinking of massive, interconnected infrastructure. They don't understand that the 21st century problem needs a 21st century solution. There's a lot to be said for let's minimize risk. Let's know what we're doing. But sometimes, when the need is really big and the currently available solutions are woefully inadequate, it is appropriate to put a stake in the ground and say, we're not doing it the way we did it before. We've got to find a totally new approach. It's time to change.
Why do you take on these impossible tasks? It's always like the hardest thing in the world. What compels you?
First of all, believe it or not, I don't get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, go after some impossible problem and make sure to frustrate yourself beyond reasonable again today. You've been doing it on water for 15 years, just keep doing that. I do not go look every morning for the most difficult problem on which I can continue to frustrate myself and all of my people and fail. That's not the goal. It's a consequence, but not a goal.
Ginger piques nationwide interest. Will it just solve world hunger?
I went to my office, and there were boom trucks with cameras. What's going on? And people were saying, well, this is the headquarters of the place with the great secret project that's going to change the world. I didn't know about the leak, but it certainly wasn't, as many people suspected, a marketing scheme. People were speculating it could beam you places. It was a transporter like in Star Trek. And I was worried from that day forward that no matter what we did, it would have the potential of having people say, really? That's all? You turned lead into gold? I was hoping for platinum.
After months of hype, the wraps are coming off that top-secret invention codenamed IT.
I want to know what it is.
What is it? What does it do? And when will it be somewhere where I can buy one?
We're about to unveil the invention that's been the subject of hundreds of media reports and the topic of a global guessing game.
Some say it will change the world. Some say that it's going to be as broad as the internet. I'm tempted to say that's it. But that can't be it.
Hey, you know, it would be really cool if it had 4 wheels and a compartment where people could sit inside.
Ginger is the evolution of walking. First, we crawled on all fours. No, first we climbed out of the ocean. Then we were 4-legged beasts. And then we learned to walk erect. And now, we ginger. People that live in cities, people that only want to move around a small community shouldn't be using a 4,000-pound machine to move their 150-pound ass around town.
One of these.
Oh, good. I like to work on projects where there's a discontinuity, where you can't use linear thinking to get from A to B to C to where we are. You have to take a big intellectual leap.
Greetings, foot people. How are things back in the 20th century?
Gentlemen, forward!
The traditional Segway, as far as I know, made a huge splash when it came out in 2002. But is it true that it's only sold about 50,000? What went wrong there?
Well, I think the problem for the Segway was really the price. At about $5,000, it's a pretty expensive toy.
In retrospect, there's probably lots of ways to go back and play the coulda, woulda, shoulda, mighta. Could it have been cheaper? Could we have addressed the market differently? But we didn't do either of those. And what difference would that have made, we'll never know.
Very smooth.
I don't think my perspective of the Segway has changed very much. It really is that connection, that segue between walking and cars. I don't know what people will be doing in 10 or 20 years when there's 9 or 10 billion people on this planet, most of them living in cities. But I know one way they won't be doing it. They won't be sitting in 3,000-pound machines called cars, creeping along, sucking up each other's exhaust. That's insane.
Are there 3 items you can't live without?
Do you mean that exist today or that I hope will exist soon?
Either one.
Well, you know, the one that sadly I don't think will come about in my lifetime, the one I've always wanted, is a time machine. The only thing that ever really scares me is the fact that life is short and you can't do everything. I work as much as I can, as hard as I can, but you can't do everything. The only thing we have that we can't make any more of is time. There's an eternity behind me, and I will never get to experience that. I won't see the Big Bang. I won't know how it happened. I won't even be able to see things of a mere 100 or 200 or 300 years ago. I will not be able to see Lincoln deliver the Gettysburg Address. There's a long timeline. Then I was born. And then, in a relatively short time, a dot along that line, I'm gone. And there'll be a very long future out there. I won't be part of that either. So in that very short segment of this nearly infinite line where I have the capacity to see the world and understand and do things, I don't intend to waste any of it.
Why is everybody saying that there's a looming water shortage, okay? Why?
Well, how about 50% of all human disease on this planet today is a result of waterborne pathogens?
People drink the water, the disease is in it, and then they get sick.
50%. How about...
Stop drinking water, that's my point.
Most organizations, when they want to clean water, first say, what's wrong with the water? And if it's ocean water, they say, let's use osmosis membranes. If it's water that's got heavy metals in it, they put charcoal filters in front of it. If it's water that's got bioburden in it, they say, let's use antibiotics or chlorine or something to kill the bioburden. But you had to know which of those processes to use for any particular problem with the water, and you had to have access to that particular solution. No, we'll just use chlorine tablets. Well, that's great, as long as you could run down to the local 7-Eleven to buy the tablets, pre-test the water. Oh, wait a minute, you can't. They don't even have roads. We can't imagine that in these little villages they have, an epidemiologist, a microbiologist, an organic chemist, somebody. So I decided, got to take a different approach to the problem. We've seen in the last generation, we went from Ma Bell, big centralized systems, to cell phones. We went from big mainframe computers to personal computing. Why can't we go in the same way in the developing world to point-of-use generation of pure, clean water out of anything, instantly, where you need it? You have to build a box, maybe the size of this, that is a simple-to-operate water utility. This is an early version of my black box. We made it black, and we wanted it rugged to sit outside. If you touch it, it feels like the bed liner of a Chevy truck. People ask me what it's made out of. It's actually made out of the bed liner of a Chevy truck. Because I wanted it rugged, and I figured those guys know how to do that.
You've got an incredible invention here. Tell me what this does.
That box is a vapor compression distiller with no filters, no membranes, no chemicals. You can stick one hose that comes out of it, which I'll show you, into any source of water.
So this thing right here, this is the dirty water?
That's dirty
over
water.
Here?
You stick a hose into anything that looks wet anywhere in the world. A puddle.
The ocean.
The ocean. A chemical waste site. A latrine.
50-gallon drum of urine.
A 50-gallon drum of urine.
Okay.
And it comes through this machine, and it comes out here as perfect distilled water. We said, what if we could make a system that might have a sophisticated technology inside, but the use of it is simpler than all the others?
So no substance put in there, except the water, will actually end up in the water over there.
That's correct.
I'm gonna put that to the test right now. Okay, hold on.
Let me help you.
All right, I guarantee you that water's gonna be sweet, spicy, and chili flavored.
Thank you, sir.
Dean's now the official clapper.
I'm going to put like the credit.
I need a credit for that. Truth is transient. And there's no place where the truth is more transient than in technology. What was true when you were a kid about technology is probably not true anymore. The idea that somebody in a little village in Ghana or in Bangladesh that has no electricity today or has no tap water today, the idea that tomorrow morning somebody there's going to wake up, oh, look, transmission lines, switch gear, high voltage, low voltage, transformers. The idea that that's suddenly going to appear out of nowhere is ridiculous. If you want a good example of where technology helped transform the developing world, think of the difference between big centralized phone systems and cell phones. There are 400 million cell phones in Africa. There are 1 billion cell phones in India. Global organizations, they work on top-down, government-to-government big programs, and we're working on bottom-up, point-of-use generation of water. I was told a very long time ago, when I started my business, that I'd never get anywhere without partners and without a tie. So I figured I'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I had a tie made out of denim, and I gave it to my partner. So I've had this guy in my office now for 30 years. We've never had an argument. He's always supportive. He's my partner, my silent partner, and he's good to have in the office.
Saw my friend Dean Kamen, whom I've known for more than 20 years. I saw the Segway before most people knew what it was. And a few years ago, we were out in Colorado together, and he said, I've got this water purification deal, and it can revolutionize the world. And here's how it works. He never made me ride the Segway. He never made me get up in that wheelchair that climbs up the stairs. I never had to take any risks to brag on Dean Kamen. He pours this awful fetid water into this machine, and it drips down, and he says, now drink it. And so I did. And I'm still here, it works.
So this is a machine we built in 2006. We'll lift the insulating case off and show you what's inside. The very first units we built, which required a few years times a few dozen engineers, cost literally millions of dollars a piece. This is made out of, as you know, expensium.
Where's the unobtainium in this?
Most of what's in here is made out of unobtainium. We do have all the unreliabilium in here. The I can't make 2 of them is in here.
Good.
My father had one mood. He was happy. He loved what he did, and he wanted to sit and do art.
You got me in there?
Oh, you're in.
One of the tales Dean would tell, somebody asked him about his father's work, and he says, you know, I don't think my father ever slept. He said, I'd wake up in the morning, and my dad was at the drawing board. And I'd go to sleep at night, and my dad was sitting at the drawing board.
I work about 8 to 10 hours a day.
Still?
Yeah.
My father was not one of those leave it to beaver it fathers. After dinner, all the other kids and the fathers would go out and play ball on the streets. My father would finish dinner and go upstairs to where he had his second studio, and he would be working. And I was sitting there watching him. And I basically said to him, Dad, you know, I feel badly for you, because all the other fathers come home from work and they get to play with their kids, but you have to go back to work. He put down his brush and he said, Dean, don't ever feel sorry for me. I love what I do. I'm an artist. I get to do something I love all the time. You need to find something that you love to do, and then you'll be the lucky guy. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I get up every day knowing that there's important things that I really want to accomplish. I tell every kid I meet, figure out something you really love to do. Get so good at it that you can make a living doing it. If you don't do that, you're cheating yourself out of a happy, meaningful life.
Now jump. What do you think?
After we had refurbished them, I took the first floor of one of my old mills and built it into a hands-on science center that I donated to the community. One morning, I walked into the little science center, and I noticed that almost every kid in the place was wearing a sweatshirt or a jersey that was about, you know, the Patriots or the Bruins. And I happened to stop and say to one of them wearing one of these jerseys, can you tell me the name of a famous living engineer?
No, I can't.
You know, we got to fix that. And I just went around to every kid and say, could you tell me the name of some role model, scientist, engineer, inventor? And not a single one could. One of the adults finally said to me, Einstein, but I think he's dead. There's nothing wrong with having great superheroes from the world of sports and entertainment and the arts. But you'd think there'd be room for a few people that contribute to society by curing disease or creating cell phone technology. Or you just look at what we take for granted, and nobody has any idea how it got here. But somehow we think it's remarkable that this guy can get the ball in the hoop at a slightly higher percentage than somebody else. It's just amazing. Anyway, I walked out of there and decided I'm going to build an organization, the purpose of which is to change the culture of the United States.
People get ready. The robots are coming.
First is an organization whose sole goal is to convince a generation of kids that science and technology and engineering actually is fun and accessible and rewarding and important. They already feel that way about sports. So we said, let's package science, technology, engineering, and math in a sporting competition. The kids working with world-class scientists and engineers build a robot that's going to compete with literally at this point thousands of other robots. First was set up on the premise that we don't have an education problem in this country. We have a culture problem. The only difference between this sport and all the others is every kid on our teams can turn pro. There's a job out there for every one of these kids. Thank you. Lots of people ask me why I put so much of my own energy into FIRST.
You're the sample. We got you for 3 years. Okay.
Go to a FIRST event, walk through the pits, talk to the kids. I am very confident that in those stands is some kid that's going to win a Nobel Prize for curing a major disease or creating a new technology. FIRST is another one of my almost overnight successes. It's only been 21 years, and it's going to be an overnight success, I'm sure, this coming season. I'm still waiting to where I can say, first is where it should be, which is in every school in the country. I've been accused of being too aggressive about the need for first. So I've decided to be the new, gentler dean. I no longer say, we need first in every school in the country. We only need first in the schools where you care about the kids.
He'd be a good father. He'd be a tremendous father. But,
As a matter of fact, several years ago, I said, I promise I'll take care of the baby until the baby is housebroken.
Of the many decisions I've made in my life, one that I am totally confident was the right one was not to have children. Am I willing to devote virtually my whole life to my children? Could I do that without being resentful? I doubt it.
The funny thing is, every child that comes into the building always runs to Uncle Dean. He picks them up, plays with them. Every one of them.
Every decision you make is a set of compromises. The only thing we have a finite amount of is our time. I'm not a Superman, and I couldn't be as good a parent as my parents were to me and still do all the other things that I feel compelled to do. So I will live with the fact that I had great parents, and I try to do things for the world and other kids that in some ways are a testament to what my parents did for me. But I don't need to go down that road. Inventions really are, I think, a lot like children. You make them, and generally, you're surprised by what you did. But after 17 or 20 years, they both sort of go off to the world and never look back. As currently envisioned, the slingshot will produce 1,000 liters of pure water every day from any kind of input water. 1,000 liters of water a day is enough for 100 people to all have plenty of water to drink, to cook, and for hygiene. And the goal is that machine will continue to do that without much maintenance or overhaul for at least 3 years, by which time it will have produced 1 million liters of clean water per machine. We worked on the machine with the mental model of sooner or later, it'll reach the time when we have to try it somewhere outside of our own lab. And, you know, I would have liked a little more time, but as they say, the safest place for a ship is in the harbor. It just doesn't do you any good there. We needed to send this thing out, and we needed to get real feedback. So I decide we got to test these machines. So I took some of my engineers. They're not exactly international travelers, but what the hell? And we supported the trial just to see whether the technology would be accepted into those environments and perform as we expected. At the time we sent machines to Honduras, I was sort of, but maybe not completely ready to let them go. I knew that that machine was delicate, fragile, very, very handmade.
This is crazy. My husband says, no problema. Lord help us.
But I also knew, sooner or later, you got to run the risk of letting people really use something. And we had reached that point.
Okay, here it is, June 3rd at about 1:30 in the afternoon. We're starting to fill the product bag. Water's going in.
We just put it in this little town and said, any kid on the way to school can come and get a 20-liter jug of water.
The first week, it was all boys, because as we all know, there's no reason for girls to go to school.
But after about a week, we noticed something really surprising. Suddenly, all the families decided the girls ought to go to school too. That was a pretty nice, unplanned side effect or benefit of this program. We proved our machine does what we said it would do with the locally available water, and that the community saw the value of it. The bad news is we noticed that most people would transfer it into a bowl or a pot or something that was not clean, and they'd have their hands in it. And we realized they didn't understand that just because we made it clean, it's not going to magically stay that way. Clearly, we needed to give them better ways to move it and to store it, and we needed to give them education about what to do and not to do with the water. And DECA is a small R&D company in Manchester, New Hampshire. We have not only no global reach, we have no marketing, no sales, no distribution. The experience in Honduras made it really clear that just delivering the machine is not going to solve the problem. People accept new ideas very slowly. In the 1840s and 50s and 60s, the telegraph had come along. Click, 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 and a telegram could go anywhere. Alexander Bell realizes instead of clicking a switch, you could use the same infrastructure that Western Union put in place, but instead of sending a telegraph key signal, you could send voice.
Mr. Watson, come here, I want you.
Alexander Bell is, of course, all excited about this. He goes to the biggest company out there. As the story goes, the board of directors of Western Union basically said, you've done a beautiful job of making this novelty that you've just demonstrated to us. But of what use would this be in a serious business? It didn't take very long before he became essentially Bell Telephone, AT&T. And Western Union scrambled for years to try to go back and buy those patents to catch up because they had all that infrastructure. But they never did. You gotta be an optimist if you try to do this stuff. If you asked me 15 years ago, how long did I think it would take? I would have said, I don't know, a year or two. And I would have believed that I can make this, and then I'll show it to people, and then the light bulb will go on in their head, and they'll see the opportunity, and success will be imminent. I think the reason that the slingshot problem turned out to be so long is because it isn't just a technology problem. How are you going to get these machines to the people that need them? And we started to worry, how are we going to make that happen? Why isn't this a success? I made it work. It technically does the job. It takes less than a kilowatt. Why doesn't it work? Well, I decided it's the distribution, stupid. I'm pretty stupid. We realized that without a partner that has an efficient, effective means of delivering these machines and the associated information and knowledge and education about them, we'd never be able to turn this thing from the science fair project that it was into an innovation that could spread around the world.
What do you want to do with this?
Well, since 1.1 billion people, 20% of the world's population, goes to bed every night sick or thirsty because they don't have access to water, clean water, we thought we'd put these in production, figure out how to get them placed around the world, and we'd wipe out 50% of human disease. I made a machine that I thought would help people with health care. That's my day job. So I went to my medical company clients. They can help. They pretty much said, we can't help you. We'd love to support it. We'll help you with money, but Dean, we can't get this stuff to these places either.
We'll see what we can do.
I went to governments. Maybe that's what they're for. When capitalism doesn't work, aid organizations, NGOs, well, they like to deal with big-scale stuff. They also might help with funding, they told me, but these big organizations don't have people that go out to these little villages. They don't have an efficient distribution channel. I went to the United Nations, said, I've got this box. Let's figure out how to help get it out there. Their basic answer was, good for you. We're rooting for you. But we don't do that. We don't distribute products. We don't build sustainable microeconomic systems. We don't lend people money. We don't make entrepreneurs. That's not what we do. I was somewhat disappointed. I believe all of these global organizations want us to succeed, but it's a different way of thinking that we're delivering to them. Otherwise, they're going to a place that they haven't been before. And getting people to do that is very hard. Innovation is a very difficult, frustrating process. I was probably, I don't remember, but young, probably 8 or 9. And I had just gotten a new bicycle. I was just riding it around and around the block. And this kid jumped out, grabbed the bike, pushed me off it, and told me he didn't want to see this Jew riding around the block. And I was lying there, and I knew that if I didn't ride around the block again, I would just feel like I had been defeated. And to this day, I remember looking up at this guy and saying, I'm not going to fight with you now. That would be stupid. I am quite sure you could easily beat me up. But I'm going to get on my bicycle and I'm going to ride around this block again. And if you stop me, you better be prepared to kill me. And I just looked him right in the eye. And he just walked away. And I got back on the bicycle and I rode around the block again and again and again until it started getting dark. And he never, ever bothered me again. One of my all-time favorite quotes, not by an inventor per se, but a guy dealing with some really big problems, Douglas MacArthur, who said, in war, as in every other human endeavor, failure can be summed up in 2 words: too late. I don't want to be too late delivering water. Every year that we wait, another couple of million people die, most of them kids. On the one hand, I am the entrepreneur in heat who always thinks everything takes too long. Every project I've ever done, it takes too long. On the other hand, that's another few million people dying because we started production late. We got to get going. This is a really, really big day. I've been given the opportunity to talk to the entire board of directors of the Coca-Cola Company about using our vapor compression distiller to solve the major global health problem, bad water.
We're flying to Atlanta. We're currently at 40,000 feet. We're flying at about 433 knots, a little over 500 miles an hour.
Squawk 3653.
Lots of people have asked me, why Coke? It's called first.
And a go! Final four, round two has begun.
It grew so big, it had so many teams from around the country that it outgrew any venue in the state. We needed a major sports arena. And we realized we could put it in the home of the 1996 Olympics, the 70,000-seat Georgia Dome in Atlanta. And we're setting up down there at this big arena, and you look up, and what's the biggest, most visible building on the skyline? And it suddenly hits me. Is there some company in the world that gets its product everywhere? Every little village? Yeah. The Coca-Cola Company has bottling operations in 206 countries, which is more than the number of countries that are admitted into the United Nations. It turned out, fortunately for us, that they had some of their own problems. They said to us, we haven't really updated our fountain system in decades. Do I have a passion to get up in the morning and work on that project? Not so much. But I said to them, I'll help you with your machines, you help me with mine. And literally we had a handshake with their chairman, who said to me, we'll try. A couple of years and a lot of effort later, we delivered and they introduced their freestyle machine. We went back to Muhtar Kent and said, now let's figure out how we can work together on the other box, my water machine.
Okay, tower runway 26 cleared to land, winds 210 at 1.
If Coca-Cola decided that it is in their best interest, it's in the world's best interest, that we quickly deploy literally hundreds of thousands of these machines, they could do it.
What are you going to say to people about Coke's earlier troubles with water?
Well, I think we've now come to live in a world of sound bites, where everybody wants a simple one-sentence, or in some case, one-word answer. And in our culture, we have people that think business is the source of all evil, and other people that think the opposite. All those simplistic answers have the advantage that they're simple. They all have the disadvantage that they're wrong.
For every litre of soft drink the company makes, it has to extract 3 litres of water. And angry farmers claim that Coke is literally sucking the water from beneath their feet.
Coca-Cola has been asked to pay $47 million in compensation for alleged environmental damage caused at a bottling plant in southern India. The plant, one of its largest there, was forced to close in 2005 after massive nationwide protests against the company.
Unbridled power by anybody, a government agency, a corporation, is always potentially dangerous. But in the end, most companies work hard to earn the respect and trust of their customers because it's in their enlightened best interest.
We all have to conserve water, and therefore Coca-Cola has been the first business in a way that has declared a goal of water neutrality by 2020. Nobody treats water with dignity in the world. Everybody thinks it's free, it's available, and then we have said by 2020 we are going to globally become water neutral. That means give back to the world every liter of water that we use in our beverages and to make our beverages.
I think it's a waste of energy, and it's a disservice to ourselves to look for who we're going to blame. And I think if we can orchestrate
what government does well, what NGOs do well, what giant corporations do well, what little inventors do well. The result of that is we make the world a better place. By sitting around trying to figure out which one of those entities is a bad guy, we do nothing. Wait a minute, isn't it Sunday now? So I get double overtime.
And we don't, you're taking a moving position.
So that's triple overtime. Where's Jimmy Hoffa when I need him? My mother calls, as all mothers do. I'm still worried, Dean. You're working too hard. You're running too far. You need to just slow down. Okay, Mother. I agree with you. So should I stop doing first? No. Okay, I'll stop working on our medical products. No. Okay, I'll just stop working on the water machine we hope to supply the families around the world so 2 million babies will have clean water. No. Okay, Mother, which of the things I'm working on do you recommend I stop? Which ones? And there's never a good answer. So I keep going. Some people like to play golf. Let them go play golf. We agreed with the Coca-Cola company that we would go out and build 15 machines for this pilot production run to be used in trials. We're going to be in 5 different schools in Ghana. And then from there, depending on how those trials go, we're moving to other places around Africa and Central America.
Sometimes I wake up about 5 o'clock a.m. I walk about 1.5 miles before I get to the borehole. That's where we fetch our water for our cook, washing, drinking. So we used to drink the water from River Densu. I got cholera. The doctor said I have a problem with my stomach. I vomit. I got fever too. About 3 days, I came back home. I want to be a medical doctor because I want to help my community from the waterborne diseases like bilharzia, cholera, and borreliosis. Especially the kindergarten, the kids, they always drink the rainwater. In the rainwater, there are some small organisms in it. Sometimes some of the younger kids fall sick in the school.
There were so many horror stories we had heard of attempts to do something like bring clean water to places that had ended in failure, not for technical reasons, but for social, economic, financial, political reasons. I was afraid that, once again, it's going to be a science fair project and not an innovation that spreads through that community and that part of the world.
It's good for everybody to drink potable water. As we always say, water is life.
When the first images came back and we saw a crowd of excited kids smiling and laughing and watching these kids just guzzle this water down, everybody realized that our ideas are one step closer to reality. So, as all of you know probably only too well, I am a big believer that the last thing you ever want to do is relax and go take a nap on that bearskin rug before you're sure you shot the bear. This bear ain't dead yet. But even I think sometimes it's nice to take a little bit of time to celebrate. A couple of weeks ago, we finally got in writing, with signatures on it, the deal. We are partners now with the Coca-Cola Company. We've got to deliver no less than 50 working machines of the next generation, half the weight and half the size, deliverable by the end of this year. You know, if it works and we supply water, we will have potentially supplied more health care through this project than the sum total of all the projects we've done in 30 years. So, Jim, don't screw it up. Cheers. To all of you.
Everybody's scared. You're supposed to be excited.
Stuart.
Have some pizza, will you?
These people are way too smart not to be scared.
Now eat the pizza.
Eat some pizza.
And drink the beer.
And then get back to work.
A long time ago in a faraway place, I literally designed the circuit boards. I etched them in the ferric chloride dish and in my mother's oven. These days, I have 400 extraordinary people, and each has some specialty that is in a different zip code of capability in their specialty than I ever was. Now, let's do that again. You hit me in the nose, you're dead. Dennis, I got good news and bad news. These things are working. To make one more of the models of the machine you've seen, I say to the 20 people in there, you make the compressor wheel out of that block of aluminum. You make this part out of steel. You add up the cost of all those people and all those resources, and it turns out it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to put another model out there. In 5 out of 5 locations in Ghana, we met every expectation we had for performance and acceptance, and we sadly confirmed, yep, the basic machine is too heavy to bring to scale, it's too expensive to bring to scale, and it was too hard to set up and deal with the sometimes erratic access to electricity. And as a result of that experiment, we said, let's figure out how to make them more cost-effective to manufacture, smaller,
and lighter, and let's do the next round.
So I know we're going over the plastic housings instead of the aluminum, but that aluminum rotor with all that machining was obviously no fun.
Costly, right.
How are we doing there?
So we're going to go to an injection molded rotor, just like we did with the housings, right? So there's your rotor.
So, plastic rotor.
Yep.
Injection mold. This part will outperform the metal part.
Our trials would be 1, 2, 3 machines. What we're calling the alpha build will be between 50 and 100 identical machines. In a real factory, in a period of a month, you could stamp out 10,000 machines, not one. The labor cost associated with that 10,000 machines is almost nothing. To make one more machine then is the cost of these finished parts, which we will get down to a few $1,000s per machine. This device will be less than half the size, less than half the weight of the machines that we used for the Ghana trials, and the goal is to have them all finished for the next level of testing in Central America and in Africa. And if that project goes as we hope, the next round of development should be relatively high volume production to start the serious project of giving water to a few billion people. I think somebody that's a really big person is somebody that doesn't mind helping everybody else around them. A really big person helps everybody else be big and doesn't use their bigness to keep everybody else small. My brother was a big person. Libby, my niece, is here. She's been with First for her whole life. She lost a dad. I lost a brother. My mom lost her son. The whole First community lost a great resource. He was a mentor, he was a volunteer, he was a judge. He was somebody everybody could aspire to be like. What I admired about Bart was he had a little bit of my father in him that I don't have, that he was so easygoing and was always conscious of making everybody around him feel comfortable, which was an incredible asset since the people around him most of the time were little kids that would otherwise be scared to death because they have cancer.
Just a month ago, yeah.
You stay very, very healthy.
It never even came into my head that I'd get old and not be able to call my brother. I believe right now I could pick up the phone and call him. I can't really believe that that's not the case. Life is so short. And Bart's passing just gives me even more urgency. My whole life, every time I thought of something good and important to do, I wanted to do it now. It's not a coincidence I build clocks, because the world's in a race between all sorts of catastrophes and technical expertise. We can't let catastrophe win. So time is critical. Coca-Cola selected ideal locations for the next level of testing Mexico, South Africa, Paraguay. What we're learning is if there are 206 different countries on this planet, we have to ask ourselves at least 206 different ways to be successful, because in each environment, there are different challenges. The ideal would be a machine that has no weight, no size, no cost, never breaks down, is available wherever you need it, all the time, free. That will never happen. There is, I think, a very pervasive but naive assumption that aid means you give things away. If you give things away with this mythical idea that it should have no cost, it will end up demonstrating that it had no value. It will be those people that are drinking the output of this device that are protecting it, maintaining it, in some cases creating a business around it and becoming entrepreneurs. The Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk in 1903. The day after they did that, you didn't see airlines. You didn't get frequent flyer miles. In fact, I believe it was at least a decade after they did that before anybody had any commercial use of any airplane. Where we were with the first machines that you saw in Ghana, we were like the Wright brothers with their first flyer. Where are we now with our Alpha machines? We're one of those early airplanes with the big propellers spitting smoke. Where would we like to be with our next machine? You know, the Dreamliner. Where do we want to be after that? A spaceship. I think the reason that water is such a big problem these days is because all the people in the Western world don't see it as a problem. In fact, they don't even see it at all. Even here in the richest country in the world, our pure, clean water isn't as pure or as clean as we thought. Sadly, most of us will probably come to see a world where you can't trust tap water anymore.
At least 41 million of us are drinking water that contains traces of prescription drugs.
Anti-seizure medications, prescription painkillers, even the antidepressant ingredient in Prozac.
There are literally, for instance, tens of millions of women that are taking birth control. And every day, they literally pass through their body hormones that municipal water systems can't filter out. And tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of hormones have a big effect on your health. The average age of puberty for young girls in the United States has been dropping pretty radically. The problem of global access to water is getting worse everywhere, including in the next decade or two, North America. There will be many places around this country where water becomes a serious issue. Everybody asks me over the years, why do we call the box slingshot? As a little kid, I was always the smallest kid in my grade. And I heard the story of David and Goliath. And to me, the moral of that story was, technology's cool. And people say to me today, well, how did you get that moral out of it? I said, well, there was this really little guy, David, and he had this really big problem, Goliath, but he had this little thing called a slingshot. And that little piece of technology took out that really big problem.
Dean, where are you? Stand up. Now, I want to tell you, about 7 years ago, I did drink some of the ugliest, most contaminated water you ever saw. Dean came and put it in his little machine. I drank it down, and I'm still here. It works. It works.
I drink it all the time, and it works, and it makes, it is just an amazing piece of equipment.
You start putting all these pieces together, and the chain will finally go from a crazy idea to, of course, it was obvious. Let's put water machines all over the world. There's no easier way to wipe out 50% of all human disease. Let's just do it. Simple.
Overnight success.
I think in less than 20 years, we're going to be an overnight success.
We ought to be helping get water to everybody on this planet. It's the right thing to do. It's simply the right thing to do. We can do it, therefore, we should do it.
So why is it prevention to give people clean water? Call me crazy. We have a Department of Defense, and we build the ultimate weapons of mass destruction. But how about if we build weapons of mass construction? And what if we go around the world and give everybody clean water, and it says us on it, we're your friend? Maybe we'll have a Department of Peace, and maybe we will prevent the wars. And if we can get these water machines into high-volume production, I think we put them around the world, and there's a way better shot that a large part of 2 billion people will be our friends. I don't have time for things that just don't matter. So, number one is I'd like to work on big problems and solve them. Number two is at least I'll be able to say to the world, I worked on a really big problem. I didn't solve it, but I tried. What did you do? And at least I hope in the end, I didn't waste my time. What I really, really want is a time machine. If I could step into some device and transport myself back to have a conversation 2,300 years ago with Archimedes. Hey, Archie, what's up with the buoyancy thing, you know? I don't know what I'd say. Or if I could go forward, even just 100 years, will they have answers to questions that we simply don't understand now? And will they be answers that are, oh, why didn't we see that?
Do you think you could build one?
As I said, whenever you talk about technology, using a word like never always comes back to haunt you. We will cure every kind of cancer you can think of. We will make computers that outperform anything you could possibly imagine. I don't say never to just about anything, but I'll say it's going to be a long time before there's a time machine, especially one that has the beautiful convenience of what H.G. Wells had in mind. Get in it, dial in a time, get out, get back in, dial in a different time. Now that's an invention. If anybody or any group of people come up with a device to do that, they deserve the whole wall. Are you ready? Are we all watching? This is pressure.
Dean, higher.
Oh, I failed. Oh, all right. Ready? You know, I don't want to say anything, but I think I've reached the pinnacle of this.
you to be thanking me it makes my brain hurt. I mean, it's the veterans that gave me the opportunity to do all these things, and I thank all of you. But